Hey YouTube, how you doing? Big E here, how's everything? Welcome to another movie review, and this movie review today, I'm kind of reviewing, it's kind of like for Warner Brothers 100th anniversary, and the movie I'm reviewing today, if people want to make fun of me for reviewing this movie, go ahead, I don't care. But it's for all you people who grew up with like PBS kids like Sesame Street, Barney, and Arthur like me, and well, today that's what we're gonna be reviewing today on this. Today's movie I'm reviewing, it's a classic. Probably familiar with it. It was Sesame Street Presents Follow That Bird. Yep. That's what I'm reviewing right here. Follow That Bird. It was the first Sesame Street movie ever. Yep. Sesame Street Presents Follow That Bird was released in the summer of 1985. And it's directed by some guy named Ken Kwapis. He also directed movies like The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants and He's Just Not That Into You. And I really enjoy Sesame Street Presents Follow That Bird. I love the music. I love the performances by the actors. I just love everything about it. It's like a road trip comedy movie. It's based on the popular longest running television series Sesame Street, created by Lloyd, Morrisett, and Joan Ganz Cooney. And it's just a good movie. It has all the Sesame Street characters in this movie. We know it has Big Bird, Bert and Ernie, Oscar the Grouch, the Cookie Monster, Grover, Count Von Count, it even has Mr. Snuffleupagus, Big Bird's best friend, and we all know, of course, the plucky green frog, Kermit the Frog. And Jim Henson is in this. He voices Kermit the Frog, his popular character, Kermit the Frog, and he voices Ernie. May Jim Henson rest in peace. And this also has, before I want to get into the other stars, I want to talk about this movie also. It was a box office disappointment. It was filmed at the Science Based Film Studio in the Toronto area in Canada, and it received a lot of positive reviews from critics. However, it was a box office disappointment. It grossed $13.9 million. It was $36 million when it was adjusted for inflation, and resulting in a slight loss for the Television Workshop. It made $13.9 million out of a budget see if I can find the budget. I don't know how much the budget was, but it underperformed at the having to open the same day as Fright Night with Chris Sarandon and Weird Science with Anthony Michael Hall. And it faced heavy competition like Back to the Future with Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome with Mel Gibson. And other than that, it did pretty good from critics. It's got a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it's got on IMDb, it's got a 6.7 out of a 10. And on eBay, it has a 4.8 out of a 5. I think it deserves more than 6.7 out of a 10. I don't know why it got that on IMDb. I think it deserves more than that. it's just a good movie. I love the music. The music is good. The actors in it are good. It has like appearances by Sandra Bernhard as the Crouch waitress. I love the scene, which I'm going to be talking about in a minute. It also has John Candy as the state trooper. May he rest in peace. Chevy Chase as the news reporter. Does he have a name? The news reporter have a name on here? As the newscaster, it doesn't say a name. He's and there was a scene where he mispronounced Sesame Street, talking about when Big Bird ran away from the dodos, and they're like he's like going back home to his home on Sesame Street. What was that? That's Sesame Street. Sorry, and it also has Joe Flaherty from the Happy Gilmore movie. We all know him when he tried to stop Happy Gilmore. He's like, "That's it, you jackass!" Sorry for what I said, but that's what. Just can't stop thinking about Joe Flaherty, that Happy Gilmore. Couldn't stop thinking about Happy Gilmore when he tried the Volkswagen scene when he caught fire. He's like, "Jackass!" But yeah, and also this movie has country music legend Waylon Jennings in it. May he rest in peace. And we all know Waylon Jennings was one of the greatest country music singers of all time. And Caroll Spinney is in this. He's voicing his Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch, because the movie's it's about Big Bird, and yep, and the movie starts where Oscar's singing. He's right behind the American flag, and he's like, "Grouches of the world unite. Stand up for your grouchly rights." I love Oscar the Grouch. And yeah, it's about the Feathered Friends Board of Birds, and they discussed it's about a organization whose purpose to place stray birds with nice bird families, and they're discussing the case of Big Bird, who lives on Sesame Street in New York. And the social worker, Miss Finch, she's voiced by actress Sally Kellerman, and I think Sally Kellerman did a pretty good job at voicing some of kind of like a villain like this. And she was sent to Sesame Street to find Big Bird a nice home. However, Big Bird is and Miss Finch was just explaining to Big Bird about how it would be a big change for him, and Big Bird says goodbye to everybody, especially his friend Mr. Snuffleupagus, and but Big Bird was I loved it when the scene where he said goodbye to Oscar, and Oscar's like, "Goodbye? That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me." And the birds, he goes with a family of dodos in Ocean View, Illinois. He begins to feel uncomfortable with them as they think poorly of non-birds, and he didn't think it was the right family for him. I mean, he left them a postcard and everything, and he leaves and thanking the dodos, and he reached his breaking point. Suggests that he should have a bird as a best friend, and when they suggested he have a bird as a best friend instead of Mr. Snuffleupagus, Mr. Snuck, who was a mammoth elephant, his best friend, he was watching. Mr. Snuffleupagus was watching Big Bird's Nest back on Sesame Street, and but then Big Bird leaves the dodos. He ends up he tries to go. He's like going back, trying to find his home on Sesame Street, and Big Bird's like in front of a retail store, TV store in a small town, and he sees everybody, the whole world seeing, even Bert and Ernie, Grover, and back on Sesame Street, that Big Bird left the dodos, and that's when Chevy Chase, I was just explaining earlier, was mispronounced the Sesame Street. He's like returning to his home on Sesame Street, and that Sesame Street, sorry. And Kermit the Frog is the news reporter, and he interviews Miss Finch in her panel truck, and she tells reporter Kermit the Frog that she intends to find him and bring him back to the dodos, and his friends they also see they band together to find him before Miss Finch does. They all get their various vehicles and everything, and like Oscar had the sloppy jalopy, and Count Von Count had this really nice classic modified car, make look like a Dracula vampire. It was really nice. They did a good job designing that car. Let me see. And sorry, I'm just looking. They all get in their cars and everything, and I love the Volkswagen they get into. Gordon and Olivia and Linda. Linda's this deaf character, sign language. They take various vehicles, and Bob, played by the late great Bob McGrath, may he rest in peace, instructs them to head to Toadstool, Indiana, to meet up with him, and but yeah, I love the cars in this, especially the sloppy jalopy, Oscar's car, and the license plate. The license plate read, that's what I'm looking for right now, see what it says. I've seen this movie in a long time, but I remember some of it. Sorry, guys, I'm just... I forget, its license plate said something, I don't remember. But anyway, they all head into their cars, and Big Bird eventually he's trying to get it. When he's getting his way home, he hitches a ride with a truck driver played by Waylon Jennings. He encourages him to preserve and yeah, and they sing that song "Ain't No Road Too Long," and I really love that song. When Waylon Jennings was telling help him build his confidence, and Big Bird thought he was going to get back there in like 3 hours, and he's like, more than three weeks or something. He's like, I'll never make it. And he's like, you got to whatever. And he's like, I found out a long time ago, you got to learn to say yes when life says no. Don't dwell on the bad times once they're past. That kind of thing can get you nowhere fast. 'Cause there ain't no mountain you can climb if you hang on tight and just make up your mind. Once you set your heart to moving on, yeah, there ain't no road too long. Yeah, and while Big Bird finds yeah, and then eventually he finds like a nice little house like with a farm to hide, and two young kids, a boy and a girl, they see him, he's eating like a chicken like this, like, and they're like, that's a big chicken. He's like, oh, I'm not a chicken, I'm a bird on the run. They recognize the bird, that's the bird from the TV. And then they offer him shelter at the farm. He stays there overnight, and then the two kids' names were Ruthie and Floyd. They allow him to sleep in the barn overnight, and while later that night, Oscar, Maria, and Telly and another Muppet go to a restaurant that said, don't drop in, bad eats. And it was a Grouch restaurant, and the Grouch cook was played by Paul Bartel, and the Grouch waitress we all know, of course, was Sandra Bernhard. She did pretty good in this. Yeah, and they're like in a restaurant, and Maria was not really happy, and she said she'll have to toss salad, and they're throwing like lettuce, tossed salads, and everything. That's what they meant by salads. And Maria tried to call Sesame Street to let them know where they were about updates on finding Big Bird. She found out the cord was cut, and they had like a bunch of different disgusting Grouch like foods, like the Sandra Bernhard. She's like, today's special will be the meatloaf with the meatloaf with butterscotch and anchovy. I have the memory, I told my mother about that. She's never seen the movie before, but I have a memory of telling her like all the Grouch foods, like especially the butterscotch with anchovies, and her exact words were, ew. I don't blame her for that reaction or response, to tell you the truth. But anyway, yeah, and then the next morning after that, yeah, that happened later that night after the kids, Ruthie and Floyd, found shelter for Big Bird at the barn. And then the next day, they wake him up. They wake Big Bird up, and then Ruthie and Floyd and Big Bird, they walk down the dirt road together, and they're like singing that song, easy going day. And that's one of the greatest sequences of the movie, in my opinion, especially the song, that's another good song about this movie that I really enjoy. It's one of the great, in some ways, I don't understand. I love this movie, but somehow, we'll talk more about I love this, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. But anyway, yeah. And while they're then Big Bird runs from, then Miss Finch arrives and she sees him, and they sneak away. He sneaks away, and then eventually he finds he sees a parade in Toadstool, and then Miss Finch sees him. He's hiding from her again, and everything. He escapes and everything, and then the two con artists we know, Sid, played by Joe Flaherty, and Sam, played by Dave Thomas. They a fraudulent carnival called the Sleaze Brothers Fun Fair, and there was a scene where after the Ain't No Road Too Long scene earlier, there where they left a kid on the, they took an apple from a little kid, and he's like, he stole my apple. He took the apple out of the kid's lunchbox, and he's like, stole my apple, and he's like, this ain't your day, kid. Now moving on, get out of here, scram. Every time I see those guys, I'm like, idiots, morons. Yeah, they operate a carnival, and they plot to capture Big Bird to put him on a display for a profit. Yeah, and after Big Bird escapes the carnival, he arrives in Toadstool. Like I said, he escapes her, and then Big Bird, he meets the Sleaze Brothers, and they asked him he's like, there's a lady named Miss Finch who's chasing me. She's after me, and do you mind if I hide in your fun fair? And he's so, you know how Big Bird, he's so gullible. He hides in the cage on the flat on the truck, their truck, and and they said, we have the perfect place for you to hide, in our hiding cage. And they put him in there, and then they moved the truck, and then they put him like in some tarp or something. And Miss Finch was looking for him, and Miss Finch failed to find him, and he escapes. Yeah, and then the Sleaze Brothers were playing cards and everything, and he asked them to when's he gonna let him out, and they're like, what's the matter, you don't like your cage? And he's like, my cage? He's like, let me out, this is bird napping. And then they were saying how much people would pay money to see him, and and they paint him blue with blue paint. He goes from yellow to blue, and they tout him as the Bluebird of Happiness. He's like, step right up, folks, check out the Bluebird of Happiness. And they're like, and he's like, catch him before his big European tour. And despite what he sadly sings about how much he was missing Sesame Street, and he wants to be back home, and despite that, he brought in a lot of customers, and Sid and Sam, the Sleaze Brothers, made a lot of money, and they were sleeping in it too, and I love the way Joe Flaherty, even though he played a bad guy in this, I love the way how he was crying. He was like, and he's like, yeah, and after the song, Sam Sleaze is counting his money with like a money machine. He's like, I'm a rich man, getting richer. Here's my money. Let me count it. And two kids saw him backstage. They saw him. He was crying, and Big Bird was like, "I want to get out of here. I can't get out of here. I want to." And he asked the kids to if they could call Mr. Hooper's store on Sesame Street to let him know where he's at. And then Sam scares him away. He's like, "Hey kids, get away from the town! Go, scram!" Every time I see that part, I'm like, what a meanie he is. But Sid, Joe Flaherty in this movie, I love Joe Flaherty, but they did good job as villains. But with the movies, the characters, I'm like, Sid, he's an idiot. Sam, played by Dave Thomas, he's just a plain meanie. But then the two kids that Big Bird asked to call Sesame Street, they let him know. He calls them. He calls Sesame Street and informs them about where he was at. And then Maria calls, and then Sesame Street, and at her, Olivia, Linda, and Gordon, they go on the trip, and they call Sesame Street, and they're like, "Do you have an update on Big Bird?" And then they said they found Big Bird. And they're like, some kids found him. They're like, he's blue, and he's at a carnival they just passed, and yep. They found, and then this morning, his friends, they sneak in the circus tent, and they found him, and they try to set him free, and they grabbed the keys, they tickle Linda, the deaf. She takes one of the dollar bills that the brothers were sleeping in. She wiggles his nose and takes the key from him, and then Big Bird sees Sid. Sid had a bunch of cookies, and then Sid cookie just and then spilled it all over Sid, and he's like, oh, and grabs one. He's like, "Don't wake up." He's like, "Thank you." Mm-hmm. And then Cookie Monster ate the Volkswagen and everything, and but then they were down. Count was like counting one keys, and he's like counting the keys. He's like, no. He's like, that's one key. And Telly was trying to tell him not to count, but then they were down to one key, and then they finally got the key, and they unlocked the cage. But then Sid and Sam get in the truck, and they drive off with Big Bird still in it, and then Gordon and Olivia chase him in the VW Beetle, while Oscar's in his sloppy jalopy he's sleeping. They're trying to wake Oscar up, and he's like, but how Gordon, in this case, Norm was driving, but he told Olivia to drive because he had he had a plan, he had an idea, and then Gordon gets from where Cookie Monster ate the hole in the roof in the Beetle. And Olivia's like, "Gordon, get out of here! Are you crazy?" And then he jumped. And then Big Bird jumps from the moving truck, and he was not comfortable. He's like, "You should never jump from a moving truck." And Gordon standing on the VW hood. He's like, "You have my permission." And then he just jumped because the VW was missing the hood after where Cookie Monster ate it. He ate the hubcaps. He ate like the bumper and everything. Yeah, and Big Bird jumps right into the part of the missing hood of the cover of the Beetle, and then he just jumps up. Now I know what you're thinking. He probably landed on the engine. He didn't, because that Volkswagen Beetles, they don't have the engine in the front. The front, that's the trunk. That's the trunk part. The engine on the Volkswagen Beetles, especially that body style, is in the back. And Big Bird jumps on the beetle. They all celebrate how happy he is, and they're hugging him and everything. But then shortly after, a police officer puts his sirens on, pulls him over for speeding, and he's like, and then they noticed Big Bird was gone. He escaped, and the kid who they stole the apple from was with them. And he's like, these the two. John Candy's like, these the two men. He's like, what's the problem? Sam's like, what's the charge, officer? He's like, what about counterfeiting, extortion, fraud, impersonating a dentist, stealing an apple from a kid? And he's like, we were just holding that for a friend. And John Candy's like, you could tell that to the judge. And Sid's like, Judge. And John Candy's like, be a man. And John can't. And Sam's like, Sid's like, I don't want to be a man. Judge Sam. Jail. But then they were arrested, and I'm sure their truck was impounded. But then, upon arriving back on Sesame Street, Big Bird was happy to be home, and everybody was celebrating how happy he was. And but then Miss Finch arrived, admitting, she's like, maybe the dodos were not perfect for him, but she said she found another bird family for him. And Maria tells her that he is happy on Sesame Street, where it does not matter that his family, it consists of human, monsters, grouches, and others. They got like cows and everything, and grouches. They got everything. I like it. They liked it, but then considering her statement, and they realized how far his friends went to bring him back. Miss Finch, she officially declares Sesame Street to be his home, and happily leaves with her job complete. And she lets him stay on Sesame Street, and she's happy. She just says Sesame Street was her home, and then he goes to see his best buddy Snuffleupagus and thanks him for like watching over his nest, and he's happy that everybody was happy. Happy and everything that he brought it back, that he's back home, and everybody celebrate. Even Oscar the Grouch is being carried in by trash in his trash can by Bruno, and he's like, and everybody made it back, and the scene where they showed Cookie Monster ate the VW, and he's like, and Gordon's wife, what was her name? Gordon's character, Roscoe Orman, played Gordon. Susan, she's played by Loretta Long. She did good as like she did on the series. Susan was like, how's my insurance gonna pay for this? What's our insurance company gonna say about this big? Then Cookie Monster, he's like eating watches him eating like the parts on it. He's like hard. He's like burped in her face. He's like, excuse me. Yeah, and then everybody's celebrating Big Bird's return, where he and then it shows the end credits. Count von Count. He's counting. He's like, one credit. That's 2 credits, and and he counts like the final credit, which says executive producer Joan Ganz Cooney. He's like, that's 10 credits. He's like, Joan Ganz Cooney. He's like, hi, Mom. He's like, that's 10 wonderful credits. Oh, I love it. And he says it because Joan Ganz Cooney, she's the creator of Sesame Street. Ever since Sesame Street first debuted on public television in 1969. You may think Jim Henson was the creator of of Sesame Street. He's not. He's the executive. He created the Muppets for Sesame Street, and I guess Joan Ganz Cooney who worked with the Sesame Workshop back then was known as the Children's Television Workshop. They asked Jim Henson to like help like with creating the Muppets for like Sesame Street, and he did voice Kermit, like Kermit the Frog, Ernie, and some other non-Sesame Street Muppets, all the way until he passed away in 1990. And since then, he's taken over for like ever since he passed away in 1990, other puppeteers like took over for like some of his voices, like Kermit, like Steve Whitmire, until he was fired like a few years ago. He took over as like the voice of Kermit the Frog and Ernie, and we know Frank Oz was the voice of like Cookie Monster, Bert and Grover, but now it's some guy named Eric Jacobson. He took his place, Frank Oz's place, after when he started to go direct in movies. Yeah. But anyway, after the credits, it shows the count, and he's like, in the end credits, he's like, that's 280 credits, and it shows like the storm sound. He's like, oh, I love motion pictures. But I just wanted to say, I love the songs in this movie too, but I just don't understand how the songs didn't get like a children's award or like nomination for like best children's movie or best family, like anything like that, for like best song or nothing, or I just don't understand. I mean, but I'm reading all this, and it, like I said, it has a 92% of Rotten Tomatoes, and but it really deserves around that, yeah. But and then and if you're wondering, you're like, what the hell's that DVD? Heck, does that DVD? This is a DVD I found at Target for about $5 back in 2014. I spent a lot of time looking for like Sesame Street Presents Follow That Bird DVD. I couldn't find it, and until I saw this DVD and had the Follow That Bird logo, and I'm like, oh wow! And I picked this up for $5, and this, when the plastic was sealed, when this was sealed, when I bought it, after I took it off, I took it off, and I put and I took this 80 minutes sticker off the seal, and I managed to put it on here, and yeah, and this shows like, however, all the Muppets are in this, and like Kermit, but it has Oscar, Count, Grover, and says Elmo on here. But however, Elmo, he was not in the movie. He just made a small time. He wasn't a big character at the time. I mean, the time of this movie, he was starting to be like getting his big break and everything. And it just shows him in the beginning where Miss Finch came back on Sesame Street and it showed Elmo with other Muppet, Elmo in a window shaking his head. They're like, no, like saying they didn't want Big Bird to leave. He didn't really make his appearance until his like movie appearance. I mean, after the movie, I guess in 1985, Elmo was starting to be like on Sesame Street like a whole lot regularly and everything, and but Elmo made another his first Sesame Street full-length movie debut in 1999, The Adventures of Elmo and Grouchland, which I plan on reviewing someday, maybe. But however, this movie, and I just really don't understand. They're both good movies. I love them both. However, Follow That Bird, it's from Warner Brothers, Elmo and Grouchland is from Columbia Pictures with Jim Henson Pictures. But other than that, that still doesn't change my opinion of how good these movies are. Yeah, but like Kermit the Frog doesn't appear in Elmo and Grouchland except for the Jim Henson Pictures logo, which I'll talk about that in the and Elmo and Grouchland does not have the same amount of characters like doesn't have a huge amount of celebrities like Follow That Bird does. But other than that, they're still good movies. Yeah, and this was Henson's final performance as Kermit the Frog and Ernie before in his theatrical film before he passed in 1990, and then but I think I just don't understand but how a great movie like that didn't like get a good award, like an award for good performances and like good songs. And but we'll talk about that. I'll be doing Elmo and Grouchland when the time comes, possibly. Yeah. Alright, YouTube. Nice seeing you. Take it easy. Be safe. Stay out of trouble. Peace.